Welcome everyone back to Dark Truth Podcast. I'm so glad that you have taken the time out of your day to join me here, to sit back and relax and, go get your glass of wine, go get your coffee, go do what you need to, whatever you're doing, listen to this while you're in the car or while you're just sitting in bed. Just, listen to what I'm saying, contemplate what I'm saying. One of the missions and one of the aims I want Dark Truth Podcast to be about is not me simply just relaying or just giving my opinion, because face it, we all have an opinion. We all have our thoughts and ideas and beliefs and biases towards certain things that happen in our world. Not just certain things, all things that happen in our world, both internally and externally. But I want this to be a thing where you simply contemplate what I'm saying. One of the greatest things I've learned in my spiritual walk is the power and the art of contemplating. When you contemplate things, it opens up doors, it opens up gates in the mind, in the psyche, in the consciousness, and even sometimes in the subconscious that would never be tapped had you just gone along with the flow and just go with the flow and just believe whatever they give us and just go with it, whatever they tell us to do. There's nothing wrong in contemplating. It doesn't make you wrong for contemplating an idea. It doesn't make you right for contemplating an idea. But I do believe that the grand architect of the universe, not the God that these religions are worshiping, the demiurge, but I mean the grand architect of the universe, all is mind. The universe is mental, the great hermetic axiom. And to meditate on that human beings, we as human beings, every single thing that we go through in this life, the physical life, let's just, from their perspective, our physical, earthly, mundane lives, is, if you really think about it, is all in our minds. So whatever situation you may be going through right now, it could be the most beautiful thing, or it could be the most horrible thing. But to a next person, put it this way: another man's God is another man's devil. It's all about your perception. It's all about your mind and how you think about a certain thing. So with that, let's get right into this. Of course, we're living in I believe that this will probably be, this era that we're living in will probably always become termed the age of COVID-19. I personally do not believe that we're getting out of this anytime soon. I hope we do. Now, I do believe after this election goes away, even if Trump stays in office, and of course, if Biden gets elected, I believe that the COVID narrative will die down to a certain extent. But I do believe that if Trump stays in office, I believe that the COVID narrative will die down, but they're still going to keep it around. Because I'm going to mention Donald Trump in this podcast. I don't want people to think, because I know how a lot of us get when it comes to Trump. And I'm actually going to make a separate podcast about that, about this Trump hysteria and this Trump derangement syndrome that I've observed and witnessed, because I personally don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm not the type of person, especially as a black man, I'm not the type of person to walk around here thinking that Trump is just this evil that just scourges the earth. He ain't did nothing no other president ain't did, if not worse, behind closed doors. But I think this podcast may shed some light on how the masses of people have such this disdain for this man who at one point was just a celebrated celebrity. And I don't want people to think that, I'm not gonna say I don't want people to think, because maybe I am looking a little bit too deep into things, but I feel as spiritual beings, we have to look deep into things. We can't anymore in this day and age that we're living in. We can no longer afford to just take things at face value, because when you start to take things at face value for anything that they give you, that's ultimately going to lead to your slavery. Remember, the white man, when he came to the shores of Africa, he didn't come with guns. And I guess we typically think that he may have came to Africa to enslave the African people on the continent. No, he sent the missionary first. Why did he send the missionary first? Because he studied and he knew that the African man and woman and child were primarily a spiritual people at their core. So the best way to get to them is to come to them first on the level that they understand, and that's spirituality, or on the level that they will accept us as, and that's spirituality. Because when you come to the shores of any group of people with guns blazing, then they automatically recognize you as a threat. Contemplate that for a second. Why is it that African people seem to have been so bamboozled and just caught up in the whole slave thing, unless this so-called slave owner and colonial man, or whatever you want to call him, he didn't come to us like that at first. He came to us first as a friend. He came to us at first as one who was extending goodwill. He was extending the Christian message. He was extending a new view of God. And because we are already a spiritual people, a lot of the symbolisms that Christianity has, like the cross and a Messiah type complex type thing, that's existed in many cultures. So it wasn't so far-fetched as to believe the narrative of Christianity, because a lot of the principles and ideas and concepts in Christianity already existed in indigenous cultures. So this podcast is dedicated for us that's on the frequency, those that like to contemplate, those that, we understand what's happening around us. And one of the things I'm grateful for, this whole, CV-19 thing that's been going around, and let me put it this way. I personally do believe that there are people that may be getting sick with something. I do not believe that it is what they're telling us that it is. And I do not believe, personally, for myself, this is just me, I do not believe that it is as bad as they're trying to make this out to be. Trust me, this government does not give a damn about your health. They've never gave a damn about old people. So why would you care about shit now? You've never responded to any other type of sickness or any other type of thing. Tuberculosis, influenza, the flu, all that type of stuff kills people, thousands of people yearly. Where's the practicing social distance for that? Where was the mask for that? You do see certain cultures like in Asia, before even this type of stuff even happened, you usually can watch TV and stuff like that. And you see a lot of people over there, in China and stuff like that, and in Japan and stuff, a lot of them will wear masks. But that was not something that was mandated. You didn't see commercials. You don't see commercials pre-COVID-19 with, I'm seeing, commercials and stuff like that. And it's just really just disturbing me. It's like, this is really a world. We're turning all that shit we like the Hunger Games and all that stuff we just find so good. That's the world we're heading towards. And the greatest way to prep people for something is to give them a movie, give them these things that's already can just marinate and just sit in their subconscious. So then when the stuff starts to really happen, you're already asleep. You already accept it. You can't come, like I said, you can't come guns blazing and then enslave a people. No, you come to them first with a good idea, with a good concept, something that they will be like, well, yeah, that does make sense. Or yeah, maybe we should be doing that. And then you show your true intentions. And by the time you show your true intentions, it's already too late. I got you. Because a slave is not a slave. I don't make a man a slave or a woman a slave or a child a slave just simply by putting chains on their arms and on their ankles. No, once I get in your mind, then you're my slave. Look at the example of an abused housewife. The man, yeah, the husband, yeah, he's not even really the husband. Sometimes the wife is abusing their spouse. But it isn't the act of the abuse that is keeping the person there. It's because they have the spouse in their mind. And as long as I have you in your mind, that's all that matters. Because I know that I can keep abusing you. I can keep saying I'm sorry, and then I'll come back right back and hit you in the face, and then I'll say I'm sorry, and you're still going to stay there. And even when your friends and your family and people that care about you are constantly trying to warn you, you need to get away from him, you need to get away from her. He doesn't have your best interest at heart. He's abusing you. She's abusing you. It doesn't matter, because in my mind, this person really does love me. In my mind, this person All is mental. The universe is mind. That is an ancient principle. That is an ancient law. That is a universal law. And we need to understand that. Like I said, one man God is another man's devil. So in the age of COVID, it has challenged me to expand my mind more, expand a lot of books I'm starting to read, a lot of philosophical thinkers and a lot of concepts and ideas. I'm glad for that, because I do believe in the expansion of consciousness. I do not believe in just staying at one layer of thinking, even if I think that one layer of thinking is something that I'm I stand firm on. There's certain things when it comes to me and my people as Black people that at one point in my life, I stood firm on those things. You can move me. You can tell me that, no, that's not. But now the type of stuff that I'm seeing right now happening and how easily manipulated I'm starting to see how my people are, then yeah, I can't say that there are certain ideas and concepts that I once held to be the gospel truth are no longer the gospel truth to me. And that is the expansion of consciousness. So I actually saw this in a comment on a video I was watching on BitCHUTE one day, and the spirit led me to a book called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, which is written by author Robert Jay Lifton. And this book was written based off his research on the psychological techniques used by Chinese communists in the prisons in China in 1953. He laid out in this book 8 main points in which he called the 8 criteria for thought reform. So basically, this author studied how the techniques used by the Chinese Communist Party in prisons with the prisoners to change their mindset and even to change their identity of who they thought they are. So let's get right into the 8 criteria. And like I said, contemplate this. When I was reading this book, and I was juxtaposing it with what was happening today, because it was crazy. I actually saw a video by David Icke. If you don't know who David Icke is, I would, advise you to look him up. You may not agree with everything he's saying, but a lot of the stuff he says is true. I mean, this man has been saying things since the 90s, and it's been coming to pass. And I think the age of not CV-19. I think the age of CV-19 is really only validating a lot of the stuff that he was always saying, but we didn't want anyone to listen to him. That's a conspiracy theorist, as they like to label anybody that critically thinks and even asks the question, well, why? Or that doesn't make sense. Oh, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. But we're going to get into that, why people respond that way. The common people respond that way. So one of the first criteria he noticed, and one of the things he wrote down was the first criteria is milieu control. And that's just simply the control of the environment. And the definition, I'm actually getting this I'll link the Wikipedia link in the comments so you guys can go and read this for yourself. It says that this involves the control of information and communication, both within the environment and ultimately within the individual, resulting in a significant degree of isolation from society at large. Now, the control of information, or when you hear the word censorship in the media or in the news, that's technically a form of control of information. We particularly see this with the U.S. President Donald Trump. What I mean by that is this. A lot of the things that Trump say, like on his tweets and things like that, Twitter, because now keep this in mind, you didn't really see this with him before this election year. Twitter didn't really go out their way. Facebook didn't really go out their way to put, this is false information, or we're going to fact check this. You really didn't see that before. But now in the age of CV-19, the age of the mighty virus, you're starting to see that. That's control of information. He says something, but then they'll counteract that and say, no. According to the CDC or the World Health Organization, or we fact check this. And when you go on to the fact check, it's some random blog that nobody has ever heard of or even visited. So what makes who checks the fact checkers? So most people do not realize that usually 90% of the information fed to you through the media is controlled information. News anchors and media types just don't jump in front of the camera with a random list of topics to talk about. No, everything is controlled and streamlined to fit the narrative they want you to be fed. Many of us make decisions daily that we believe to be our own, never once asking ourselves, what if this decision was suggested to me? For example, and actually this is a little bit of homework for my listeners. Next time you go into a store and you're getting groceries, or not just groceries, but anything, stop and ask yourself this one question. Why do I want that? So say if you're hungry and you have a piece of chicken and you see the chicken, you want that. Ask yourself, well, what makes me want that piece of chicken? Was something suggested to me to want that piece of chicken? Why not go get the apple instead? Because technically my body isn't my physical body, my stomach, so to speak. It's growling, yeah, but it isn't telling me that I want chicken. It's just saying that it's just giving me the signal that I'm hungry. The mind, on the other hand, is saying something different. But where was that suggested? Where did that concept and that idea even come from? You drive past a McDonald's or a Burger King, and you stop and you think, oh yeah, I want some McDonald's. What is that? Where did that come from? Who suggested that to you? So the control of information in the age of CV-19, an age of the virus, we see it, but at the same time too, the control of information has kind of really always been around. Propaganda, things like that. They intentionally give you certain topics and information that they feel is in their best interest for you to have an opinion on. So the control of communication is another interesting thing, as during the lockdowns, communication switched from in-person communication overnight. You can went from in-person communication, meaning we can meet at work and we can have a meeting at work and we can talk about this, to, oh, no, you have to stay at home. We can have a Zoom call and we can just contact over social media. All of which, mind you, can be tracked and recorded. How many commercials began to promote the use of Skype-like programs to communicate, which plays ultimately into the isolation from a society at large. Stay at home. Don't go nowhere. If you need to talk to somebody, if you need to go to work, contact each other over Zoom calls. I know that the Facebook Messenger video thing, I was seeing like a lot of commercials for that when I've never really seen that before. But they know that now we can capitalize off this idea that you at home, you can't go nowhere. We know you can't go nowhere because either A, everything's closed, or B, it's a curfew. So at a certain time, you kind of have to stay at home unless you don't want to be pulled over by the cops and questioned like you in 1930s Nazi Germany as to where you're going and why you're going there. So then we get to the second criteria, which is mystical manipulation. This is the manipulation of experiences that appear spontaneous, but is in fact planned and orchestrated by the group or its leaders in order to demonstrate divine authority, spiritual advancement, or some exceptional talent or insight that sets the leader or a group apart from humanity, and that allows the reinterpretation of historical events, scripture, and other experiences. Coincidences and happenstance oddities are interpreted as omens or prophecies. And actually, as I'm recording this, the spirit just hit me and gave me an example of this. But these are my notes that when I'm side note, if I'm reading it and I'm saying, and it sounds like I'm reading something, these are actually my notes that I'm reading. But so I wrote that now, if we break this down in the age of COVID, we clearly see the manipulation of events being used by the higher ups. That to the people, the common people, us, may seem spontaneous and random. Case in point, one of the main narratives that was coming out when this whole virus thing first happening was that, it was something that some people believed that this was just a random thing by nature. And then there was a narrative going around that this was actually a virus released by China. Now, when President Trump said that it was a Chinese virus, quote unquote, or that, this is from China, this is from China. Oh no, you can't say that. That's racist. And then, but then what do but then if it escaped from a Chinese lab, and then they already have in your minds that China is like the enemy number one, then wouldn't it make sense that an enemy would release something that's going to affect the country that it hates so much? Because clearly it just seems like now America is just ground zero for this so-called pandemic. You really don't hear nothing no more coming from Italy. You really don't hear nothing no more coming from France. You really don't hear nothing no more coming from the UK. You see how the shit works, how the maps and shit like that no longer really goes about the world. It's just focused on the United States now. The cases happening in certain states. The death tolls and stuff like that are happening specifically in America. See, the control of information plays like this. First, we give you, because really America is ground zero. We give you a place, Italy, the deaths, all these people dying over in Italy and stuff like that. See, that's to condition your mind to think that this is happening to an outside world. So if it's happening like this to an outside world on this magnitude, imagine what's happening. Imagine what's going to happen when it comes here. It could be me. That could be my mom. That could be my father. That could be my aunt. That could be my cousin. Because if the shit just randomly started popping up in America at first and nobody was really seeing it, then I think the narrative in the story will be a little bit different. But no, you have to first get the world. And I will say this, I don't want to get too far off topic of what I'm saying, but I will say this. This virus has proven to me that a lot of the narratives of certain countries not liking each other is controlled opposition, because the world seemed to have came together for this random thing that appeared random to us, but to higher ups was clearly controlled. They clearly knew what they were doing. They clearly laid it out. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, stuff like that. I think there was like a conference or something where they took actors and basically, this was last year in 2019, and they actually basically had like a planned out thing or like a staged thing of what would happen in a pandemic, and the next year COVID just happens to break out, and all the topics and all the things that they were going on, how the news was going to respond, how they were going to have to use celebrities to get you to really take this serious. Because let's just face it, if it's something that they really want you to take it serious, they use the celebrity to co-sign on it because you love the celebrity so much, and we vicariously live through these celebrities. Then if Tom Hanks is saying that is bad, then I must believe that it's bad. So if we break it down, we see that I don't think any of us could fathom the idea that this entire time we were being lied to. I don't think some people can even stomach that fact, or they even that thought. You even bring up that thought, they automatically dismiss it. Oh, no, why would the government lie to us? Why would the government do this? Why would the government do that? One of the things I'm seeing with my people is, okay, well, you're talking about white supremacy and this government being this racist government. Why would a racist white supremacist government that has your extinction in mind give you the truth and all of a sudden care about your health and practice social distance and wear a mask and don't go nowhere and things like that? Let's really think, people. We see many people call this a pandemic. And if you believe what is going on is real, the timing of events does seem especially suspicious during an election year. One of the main topics, one of the things that Biden and Kamala Harris are really running on is the fact that Donald Trump is the cause of all the deaths that's happening in America. He's the cause of the virus, or the virus having such a spread and stuff like that. Be very careful when you see certain things pop off during an election year. We see that what better way to criticize the president, like in my notes I wrote, than the mismanagement of a virus. It's different than saying Trump mismanaged the economy versus he mismanaged a response to a virus. Think about that for a second. Because if we really objectively look towards it, besides the racism and the misogynist and the he don't like immigrants and the wall narrative, what else could Joe Biden and Kamala Harris possibly run off of to get the American public to want to vote for them? Oh, yeah, my grandma died of COVID-19. My sister died of COVID. So then, yeah, he is out. No, yeah. See, now you make it personal. Now, yeah, I will vote for Biden and Kamala Harris because they know how to manage the virus better. Because like I said, if this even if they get elected, I really don't think this whole COVID narrative is going to die down. But I think that they've already shifted society in such a way that there can really be no going back. Because when you all of a sudden you go back to the so-called old normal, then people are going to wake up and be like, well, then there probably was some bullshit just used for an election year. So no, they know they can't go back. And you know that they can't go back. So then our next criteria we get is demand for purity. This is the definition for the demand of purity is the world is viewed as black and white, and the members are constantly exhorted to conform to the ideology of the group and strive for perfection. The induction of guilt and or shame is a powerful control device used here. So what does that mean? I wrote that the demand for purity is pushed on a societal level during the age of COVID, as the world truly is seen in a black and white way. Either one believes that virus exists and you're on the right side of history and humanity, or you don't believe that it exists and you're a conspiracy baiting, racist, misogynist Trump supporter, even if you're black, by the way. There could be no middle ground. One cannot say that I believe that this is real, but I question the narrative of the numbers. I question the number of people that they're saying that are dying. No. You can't do that in the demand for purity. That's a sin. You're either on our side, you're either for us, or you're against us. You're either for humanity or you're being selfish and you don't care about humanity. The induction of guilt and shame is used when one doesn't want to go along with what the masses of wearing a mask and practicing social distance. Now let's stop on that word practice, because that's one of the things that they always say is to practice. Now, let me pull it up. Let's see here. If we look at the word practice, and if we look at the dictionary definition of the word practice, as a verb, it says to perform an activity or exercise a skill repeatedly or regularly in order to improve or maintain one's proficiency. The second definition under the verb says to carry out or perform a particular activity, method, or custom habitually or regularly. When you practice something, say if you're, for example, you're practicing for a basketball game or you're practicing for a football game, you're training the body and you're training the mind for the main event, which is the game. So when you're practicing social distance and all they keep practice social distance, they're trying to get your mind in this mindset that this is the new normal. Understand a lot of the words that they're putting out to you. The social scientists that watch us and understand us, I had made a post about this. I said, well, you couldn't call it the New World Order because New World Order, that's too scary. It has too much of an end times biblical connotation to it. And if you're saying it, people are already going to know, okay, this is probably not good. But then when you say new normal, see, that takes on a whole different connotation, because nobody was going around saying that this is the old normal way of life. It was just... No, I mean, it was just, you just lived. But all of a sudden, new normal, all of us automatically says that there was an old way of living. And now this is going to be your new way of living. So you need to practice your new way of living. How many times has a mindless NPC drone-like individual spewed the same old, you're selfish nonsense to you? It becomes so ingrained in the subconscious of the masses that they repeat words and phrases almost on autopilot to induce guilt and shame. Celebrities are paid millions now to tell you to stay at home, and if you don't, you surely hate grandma. Actors like Tom Hanks makes his thoughts known that if you don't wear a mask, he doesn't respect you. Dave Bautista, the wrestler turned actor, for his fame in the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Marvel stuff, playing Drax, recently said that people that don't wear masks are little bitches. Go back and watch CNN interviews with common citizens that refuse to go along with the lockdown dictates of their power-hungry governors and mayors, and observe the disgust in the eyes of people like Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, and white woman tears Brooke Baldwin, all to induce that guilt and shame because you're being selfish. And I'm going to stop on that. I'm going to expand on that a little bit right now. When you go back and watch interviews of, they have regular people, mainly on CNN, because where I work at, the news is pretty much on all the time. And I intentionally keep it on Fox News for a reason. And you go back and watch old CNN, not old, but I guess like recently passed CNN interviews where they have regular people that I know there was a barber out in California, and he refused to close his business because, you know, he had to eat. I mean, this is how he makes his money. This is how he feeds his family. So he didn't have no problem with being in the business and stuff like that and cut people's hair and wearing a mask. But as long as he was open, they had him on an interview on CNN, and you can just see the disgust in Don Lemon's. I think it was actually Brooke Baldwin who supposedly had COVID, had interviewed him, and you can see just the look in her eyes, like, you're just this disgusting human being, that how dare you want to open up your business? How dare you want to feed your family? So you see in this age of COVID, this induction of this guilt, and it's usually by using that term that, well, you're being selfish. You don't care about the group. You only care about you yourself as an individual. The next criteria is confession, which is sins are defined by the group, are to be confessed either to personal monitor or publicly to the group. There's no confidentiality anymore. Members' sins, attitudes, and faults are discussed and exploited by the leaders. Now, the great sin, if you're not wearing a mask, is in full force by the group hive mind. Extreme leftist liberals want you to confess at the altar of society every secret thought and every secret crime you've ever had. Confession in the age of COVID goes under the name cancel culture. When we see that there's no from the definition, there's no confidentiality, members' sins, attitudes, and faults are discussed and exploited by the leaders. The leaders are pretty much your politicians. We can clearly see that, for an example, with the Trump and the Biden campaign. Trump's attitude, whereas people think that, oh, he's making this all about him. His faults, or that his perceived faults, is that he is too arrogant, or see, these are discussed and exploited by the group to pretty much get you to vote for them. Our next criteria is sacred science, and this is the group's doctrine or ideology is considered to be the ultimate truth, beyond all questioning or dispute. Truth is not to be found outside the group or the hive mind. The leader, as a spokesperson for God, is for all humanity, is above criticism. So the leader is also too above criticism. Now, supreme leader of the new normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci, makes it known that Americans seem to have this anti-science mindset. Those that question the numbers and deaths from the virus are said to be conspiracy theorists that spread dangerous and life-threatening information. I even have a good friend, and they probably listen to this, but I'm gonna say it. I even had a good friend that when this stuff first started coming out, and I was saying, I really don't think that this is what people are making this out to be. They said that, well, where are you getting this false information from? Little stuff like that you're simply regurgitating what you hear on the news. Nobody really talks like that on a normal basis before this stuff happens. Let's keep it real. Those that question the numbers and deaths from the virus, like I said, are considered to be conspiracy theorists that spread dangerous and life-threatening information. Trump is telling people to drink Clorox bleach and fish tank cleaner and shit, stuff like that. Supreme Leader Fauci is uplifted at the altar of mainstream science as holding the ultimate truth on how we, the people, need to respond to this so-called invisible enemy. Truth is not to be found in the findings of other health professionals and scientists, since there are other health professionals and scientists and doctors that are saying we don't agree with what the mainstream media is saying. We see it differently. We actually are in the hospital treating people. But no, those groups of scientists and health officials, no, they're wrong. They're just Trump supporters. Don't believe them. You surely don't want to believe a Trump supporter. Remember, doctors and experts can be bought just as well as politicians can. The aftermath of the censorship of the doctors that dared question the sacred mathematics and science of the mainstream media is enough in itself to show that the powers that be are telling you, the world, we are above criticism. The doctors that had the main Nigerian doctor, when she had came out and she was basically saying that hydroxychloroquine is actually an effective treatment for this stuff, and we don't have to be going around wearing masks. I mean, God forbid you say you have a health professional say, no, y'all can open up schools, like the kids gonna be okay. Oh, no, you're wrong for that. And notice too how now it's back to school season. The narrative is starting to shift now to, well, how is this affecting children? See, at first it was little kids. That's why when it comes to the mask thing, they was only really having an age limit to wearing a mask. And like little kids, I think like under 10 or something like that, they didn't have to wear one because clearly they thought that these children pose no great risk to spreading this virus. But now that it's time to go back to school, and now that parents are trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? I got to go to work, but am I going to just leave if I have to leave my kid here, a babysitter and things like that, you just turn life upside down for these parents with these children. Oh, now let's talk about how, oh no, the coronavirus is really affecting children too. Some children are dying from it too. See, in the beginning, it was old people. Then when spring started to roll around and it was really starting to get back hot, and you had young people wanting to go outside, wanting to party, wanting to go to the beach on spring break, then the narrative changed to how, oh no, this is affecting young people. Shouldn't feel like they're invincible to it, or young adults shouldn't feel like they're invincible to it. And there are young people that are dying from this. So now it's back to school season. So now the children are dying from the shit. So we see that the world's powers are telling you our law is above criticism. Our word is above criticism. And if anyone dares question our word, then you're a conspiracy theorist. You're spreading false information. We have to fact check you. This is how it begins. This is how that starts. The next criteria is loading the language. The group interprets or uses words and phrases in new ways that often goes to the outside world unnoticed, or they don't understand. The jargon consists of thought-terminating cliches, which serves to alter the member's thought process to conform to the group's way of thinking. Loading the language includes phrases like "stay home," "we're in this together," "just wear a mask," "frontline responders," "you're being selfish." All are used and repeated throughout the hive mind. So then you get people that would never normally talk like this, all of a sudden finding themselves talking like that. And they all sound the same. I remember some woman on Facebook thought she was trying to check me about when I was saying, well, I really don't believe those, but you're being selfish, and I hope somebody that catches it and die and stuff like that, so you can see how really serious it is. It's just this hive mind. If you ever watch Star Trek, this reminds me of the Borg. And if you don't know who the Borg are, look it up. The Borg, B-O-R-G from Star Trek. And really research and look up how they was acting, how that particular villain was acting. So a thought-terminating cliche goes like this. Well, everything happens for a reason. And somebody say, maybe, well, why? The thought-terminating cliche comes in, well, because I said so. That's why. Or I'm the parent. That's why. A thought-terminating cliche is used to terminate the mind from going any further into questioning or contemplating an idea that the group have this consensus of already believing in. The fictional thought police from George Orwell's novel 1984 show how the totalitarian newspeak in his novel, the totalitarian government had their branch of it called Newspeak, which was pretty much the only news outlet that was fed to the world, and how they carefully made sure that any unorthodox thought, any unorthodox words, any unorthodox way of thinking was carefully monitored and terminated so they can push their narrative. And if you was caught thinking a certain way or believing a certain way, you could even be put to death for it. It is also interesting that the popular game Fortnite has released a trailer based off a concept for 1984. And it made me wonder, are they trying to tell us something, or are they actually mocking us? Now, our next criteria is the doctrine over the person. And this says that members' personal experiences are subordinated to the sacred science, and any contrary experience must be denied or reinterpreted to fit the ideology of the group. The age of CV-19 puts the group mind over the individual's mind. Many, and I mean many people say that either A, they don't know anyone who has had this virus, or B, knows someone who or themselves that may have had symptoms of this, but it was so subtle and it quickly went away that it really isn't something that you need to be, and then you may have occasional few people say, well, yeah, my grandmother may have passed from it, even though I honestly personally believe that you don't know that's what they passed from. You're taking the doctor's word. And like I said, doctors and health professionals can be bought just like, look up how much these hospitals get for writing COVID-19 on your grandmother's death certificate. And you see even in the news now that you have people questioning, I think a man in Florida died of a motorcycle accident and they put COVID-19 on his death certificate. Anything to keep these numbers up. Our next criteria is dispensing of existence. This means that the group has the prerogative to decide who has the right to exist and who does not. This is usually not literal, but means that those in the outside world are not saved, unenlightened, they're unconscious, and they must be converted to the group's ideology. If they do not join the group and are critical of the group and their teachings and what they're saying, then they must be rejected by the members. Thus, the outside world loses all credibility in conjunction. And should any member leave the group, he or she must also be rejected also. We must remember that the outside world here refers to the other information that is constantly being censored by corporate giants. Post something about COVID on Instagram and Facebook and they will fact check you. You will get a notification saying, well, you posted something, but we're going to put the CDC's things and stuff like that. Like I said, actually, I had posted something about COVID and a follower of mine had inboxed me and was saying that this was over because I couldn't see it, but I guess to the people that follow me when they see that, and they was so-called fact checking my posts. And when I went to the so-called fact checking thing, I think I'm about to be led to the CDC's website where I'm led to a random blog of somebody that just simply don't like Trump and they just want Biden in office. So that's the fact checkers. People that just are against Trump. As long as you're against Trump and against what he say, then you can be considered a fact checker. It kind of reminds me of being a Harry Potter fan. All this actually reminds me of this. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, you probably can understand what I'm saying. If not, I advise you to go watch Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix or read the 5th book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. All this reminds me of Professor Umbridge, who the Ministry of Magic had placed in Hogwarts because she wanted a Ministry of Magic approved defense against the dark arts course. All other courses and teachers were banned when she came to Hogwarts. I also find it ironic how she was placed in charge of defense against the dark arts at a time a really dark threat had returned to take over the wizard and the Muggle world. She was placed there to censor the information being spread about the reality of Voldemort's return within Hogwarts. Remember, many of Harry's own friends were against him saying at first Voldemort had returned. They were feeling that him and Dumbledore were simply trying to seek attention. The ministry wanted to deny that, the Ministry of Magic, that is, wanted to deny that the reality of Voldemort's return because it would make them seem weak and that they didn't have a control over the wizarding world like they thought that they would, like people thought that they had. The new normal for Hogwarts came with new proclamations when they said that she became the new High and what did they call her? I don't want to say High Inquisitor because I know I think it was High Inquisitor, but she took over Dumbledore's position as being pretty much the new headmaster of Hogwarts. And with it, she totally changed the culture. She totally changed the face of how Hogwarts operated and looked. She took down all them pictures that was in the staircase, the moving staircase. She took down all that stuff. She put up all them proclamations saying that if students are caught doing this or are caught doing that, then they're gonna get in trouble. Y'all remember when Harry had got detention and she used that spell to basically etch into Harry's skin that he must not tell lies. You see the same stuff is pretty much happening right now. And if you notice in the movie, when the students was taking a test and she was standing in front of them while they was taking a test, look at the way the desks are set up and then think about social distancing. For one to become critical even in the slightest of the CV-19 narrative, not saying whether or not something exists or not, because I know people get in their feelings the moment you say, well, I don't really think that exists. But even if you say, well, yeah, it does probably exist, but Don't say but. You become public enemy number one the moment you even have a thought of, yeah, but. So in closing, I find the idea of thought reform fascinating in light of what we're seeing happen before us, because the sleeping masses walk around daily as if they truly know the reality in which they walk. Just wear a mask. Now go to sleep and wake up in a world now. Well, wear a mask now and go to sleep, and you'll wake up in a world where you will soon realize what you had lost, what you had and what you lost all along. So in closing, I want us to understand that even though I just laid out all these criteria and things like that, you may think that it's not really like that. And like, the world's not going to go back to normal. We are seeing that now. I fear, and I'm surprised that the spiritual community is so silent on stuff like this. I mean, yeah, when the George Floyd stuff and the black supremacist stuff, the George Floyd stuff and the, white supremacy and, that thing became part of the narrative. The spiritual community was so behind that. But when it comes to this thing, it's like, how can we not see what they are literally changing this world into? And I think sometimes we become too comfortable in our own individual day-to-day lives and in the world around us that we don't ever think that. See, I think that when we think of FEMA camps and the things like the Hunger Games, like the world, like the Hunger Games, so like, oh, that's just regulated to science fiction, and that's just regulated to the movies, and that's just regulated to the imagination, and that probably can never even take place. But we have to ask ourselves, even when watching those movies, how did the world get like that in the first place? Because most people in their right mind, I ain't even gonna say that, because looking at the world now, I don't even think people are so compliant and obedient that, I mean, hell, you do have to ask yourself, how does the world even get like that in the first place? And all it takes is a majority of group of people to say, well, we'll go right along with it. So thank you so much for listening. Comment below. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this. How has this affected your life? Have you come across the Karens and the ones that are just really at your throat because you simply are questioning stuff? One of the greatest sins Lucifer ever did when it came to God and being thrown out of heaven was that he questioned God's reasoning for certain things. And because you question the authority, that automatically makes you the outcast. And notice too that God cast them to the earth, and not, that's weird, but that's another story for another day. So yeah, comment below, let me know what you guys are thinking, and you have a blessed day.